Imagine you check into an emergency room, right?
Yeah.
You are having a severe heart attack.
Okay.
But the doctor, looking at your chart, is legally required to completely erase your 10-year history of high blood pressure from your medical record.
Wow.
Yeah. So they treat the immediate symptom, but they are completely blind to the underlying disease. Sounds completely insane.
Right. It sounds incredibly dangerous, honestly.
Well, today we are looking at how police forces have been doing exactly that to victims of stalking.
It's a terrifying structural blind spot, really.
Hmm.
And to understand how we got here, and more importantly, how we fix it,
Yeah.
we have to look back at an event that exposed the cracks in the foundation so clearly that, well, society simply couldn't look away anymore.
Okay, let's unpack this. We need to start by setting the scene. It's July 28, 1986, Fulham, southwest London.
Right.
Suzy Lamplugh leaves her office at Sturgis Estate Agents. She has a handwritten appointment in her diary to show a house at 37 Shorolds Road, and the client is simply noted as Mr. Kipper.
Just Mr. Kipper.
Yeah. She heads out to the appointment, and she never returns. What does the evidence tell us from that day?
Well, the physical evidence left behind painted an incredibly ominous picture right away.
Right.
At 10:01 p.m. that night, police found her white Ford Fiesta Company car abandoned.
Okay.
It was about a mile away on Stevenage Road. It was badly parked, the handbrake was left off, and her purse was still just sitting in the door pocket.
Which is already a massive red flag.
Exactly. And crucially, the driver's seat was pushed much further back than Suzy would have had it.
Which implies someone significantly taller, probably a man, had been driving her car, right?
Exactly. It's a hallmark of a hasty exit by an unfamiliar driver. And there were eyewitness sightings that day to back up the idea that she wasn't alone.
Right, outside the house.
Yeah. A woman matching Suzy's exact description was seen outside the Shorolds Road property around lunchtime, and she was visibly arguing with a man.
And the description of this man is so specific.
Very specific. He was described as suave, wearing a dark suit with dark swept-back hair. And strangely enough, he was holding a bottle of champagne.
And that specific detail, the champagne, it becomes the absolute cornerstone of the investigation for decades.
It really does.
Because in 2002, the Metropolitan Police took the incredibly rare step of publicly naming a prime suspect without actually charging him. A man named John Cannon.
Right. And Cannon was already in prison by 2002.
Right.
He was serving a whole life sentence for the 1987 murder of a newlywed named Shirley Banks, as well as, multiple violent sexual offenses. And when investigators looked closely at Cannon, his M.O., his method of operating, matched the man seen with Suzy perfectly.
Looking at the sources, it's actually chilling how well it matches. I mean, he habitually posed as a wealthy West Country businessman.
Yeah.
He was known to ply women with chocolates and champagne to disarm them before turning violently on them if he was rejected.
Which perfectly explains the witness side.
Exactly. And he even specifically targeted houses that were up for sale as hunting grounds.
But it goes deeper than just his M.O. While in prison for earlier offenses, Cannon had actively used the alias Kipper.
Wait, really? The exact name from the diary?
Yes. And he had been released from a prison hostel in West London just 3 days before Suzy vanished.
Wow.
But the detail that truly anchored the police's theory involves a fake license plate they found Cannon had used on another car.
Right. The letters and numbers on the plate were SLP 386S.
Right. SLP perfectly matches Suzy Lamplug's initials.
Okay.
But the numbers are what's truly disturbing. Investigators realized that 386 matches the exact Northern Line map grid coordinates near where Cannon had dumped the body of his other victim, Shirley Banks.
Which, for those outside the UK or just not into cartography, the Northern Line is a specific horizontal axis on British Ordnance Survey maps used to pinpoint exact locations.
Exactly. And the S at the end of the plate could easily stand for south.
That is incredibly dark.
It was a level of macabre game playing, a literal signpost that Cannon was psychologically known for.
Which brings us to November 2024. John Cannon died in prison at age 70 from a ruptured abdominal aortic aneurysm.
Right.
And he denied having anything to do with Suzy's disappearance right up until his last breath. The sources mention Suzy's brother, Richard, expressing hope that Cannon might have left some hidden clues behind in a fictional book he was supposedly writing in jail.
It's just devastating for the family.
It really highlights the sheer desperation for answers. But this is where I really have to challenge the police's absolute certainty about Cannon.
Really? You're skeptical of the connection. I mean, you have to understand the sheer weight of the circumstantial evidence.
I know.
The champagne, the alias, the timing of his release, the license plate. It's an overwhelming psychological profile.
I hear that, but think about the danger of confirmation bias here. It's like trying to force a piece into a jigsaw puzzle because the colors kind of match.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
If you decide a guy is guilty, you start viewing every coincidence as a clue. We know Cannon was a monster. But the Crown Prosecution Service ruled in 2002 that there simply wasn't enough hard physical evidence to charge him.
That's true.
So doesn't heavily fixating on a guy just because his MO matches run the massive risk of missing the actual perpetrator?
That's a fair pushback. And honestly, it is exactly why the case had to remain officially open.
Right.
The circumstantial evidence was heavy, yes, but without a charge, the foundational assumptions of the investigation were always vulnerable to being challenged, which is exactly what happened, because the door wasn't just propped open. A few years ago, someone kicked it wide open.
Enter former Scotland Yard detective David Vidicett.
Yes.
In 2019, he came forward with a totally different narrative. He spent years investigating the case independently and concluded that the police had been following a false trail for over 30 years.
Vidicett looked at the logistics of that day and suggested something radical, that Suzy didn't even have the keys to the Shorolds Road property.
Wow.
He claims she never went there at all. His theory is that she actually fabricated the Mr. Kipper appointment in the branch diary herself.
But why would she do that?
Well, his theory is she did it to give herself an excuse to leave a very short-staffed office to run a personal errand.
Oh, wow. If that's true, the entire foundation of the case collapses. The mystery client, the house viewing, it's all a smokescreen.
Exactly.
Think of it like a honeypot in cybersecurity, right? It's a fake decoy designed to draw all the attention and resources to one spot while the real action is happening somewhere completely different.
That's a great way to put it.
And here's where it gets really interesting. Fast forward to breaking news from May 2026, reported by Property Soup.
Yes.
The Metropolitan Police's Cold Case Homicide Unit, operating under the name Operation Phoebus, is now actively reviewing a link to a completely different suspect.
Stephen Wright.
Yes, Stephen Wright.
Stephen Wright is infamously known as the Suffolk Strangler. He's currently serving a whole life sentence for the murders of 5 women in Ipswich in 2006, and he recently admitted to killing a 6th victim.
Just awful.
Truly. And the factual bombshell connecting him to this 1986 case is that Wright and Suzy Lamplugh actually knew each other.
This blew my mind when I read the sources. They worked together on the QE2 luxury ocean liner in the early 1980s.
Yeah.
She was a beautician on board, and he was a steward.
And here is the mechanical part of how cold case units operate today. They don't just look at old witness statements. They digitize massive troves of historical data.
Okay.
So by analyzing 40-year-old maritime shipping manifests, investigators confirmed that the QE2 docked in Southampton in the early hours of July 28, 1986.
The exact same morning Suzy vanished.
Precisely. It places a known serial killer who already had a personal connection to the victim in the exact geographic region on the exact day.
That is chilling.
And there is still a sliver of hope for physical evidence to tie this all together.
The fingerprint.
Right, the fingerprint. The police still have a tiny smudged fingerprint lifted from the rearview mirror of Suzy's abandoned car.
Oh, wow.
For years, this was entirely useless. Early forensic chemical swatting would have destroyed the sample entirely without guaranteeing a result.
Sure, the tech just wasn't there.
But with rapid advances in modern touch DNA technology, where scientists can pull profiles from microscopic trace cells, there is renewed hope that this smudged print might finally yield a definitive answer.
This raises an important question, though. If Vidicett's theory is right, if the Mr. Kipper diary entry really was just a personal decoy Suzy made up, doesn't that completely validate the Crown Prosecution Service's decision not to charge John Cannon back in 2002?
How do you mean?
Well, because if the diary was fake, Cannon's prison alias of Kipper goes from being a smoking gun to just, like, a meaningless coincidence. It's a magician's misdirection.
It absolutely validates their hesitation, yes.
Yeah.
If the foundational timeline is flawed, the entire investigative matrix shifts. It kicks the door wide open for the Stephen Wright theory.
I know it's incredibly tempting to just obsess over the true crime element here, the conflicting theories, the serial killers, the shipping manifests.
Of course.
But for you, listening right now, the real story isn't just about who took Suzy. It's about what was happening in the background for the last 40 years. Because Suzy's parents, Paul and Diana Lamplugh did not sit around waiting for cold case detective to untangle this
No,
mess.
they certainly didn't.
They decided to change the legal system themselves.
The speed at which they mobilized is staggering, honestly. They established the Suzy Lamplugh Trust in December 1986. That's just 4 months after their daughter disappeared.
That is incredible resilience.
It really is. They channeled unimaginable grief into building a legacy of safety. Both Paul and Diana were eventually awarded OBE's Officers of the Order of the British Empire.
Which is a huge deal.
Yes, it's one of the highest civilian honors in the UK, recognizing their massive societal impact before they passed away.
And the legislative milestones the trust achieved are just everywhere. In 1990, they established a missing persons unit, which evolved into the National Missing People Charity.
Right.
They campaigned relentlessly to regulate minicabs in London, pushing through the Private Hire Vehicles Act in 1998. So you aren't just getting into an untraceable car with a stranger.
Which we totally take for granted now.
Exactly. In 2010, they launched the world's first national stalking helpline, and they were instrumental in driving the Stalking Protection Bill of 2019.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, what the trust effectively did was shift the entire national conversation.
How so?
Think about the 1980s. Personal safety was almost entirely framed around victim blaming. What was she wearing? Why was she walking alone? Why did she meet a stranger?
Oh, absolutely.
The trust forced the conversation towards systemic safety. They legally defined the crime of stalking, shifting the burden of accountability onto the perpetrators and the systems meant to catch them.
It makes me think of building guardrails on a treacherous mountain road. For decades, people were just falling off the cliff, and society was basically saying, well, they shouldn't have driven so close to the edge.
Right.
The Lamplugh family stepped in and actually built the guardrails. But reading through the sources, it leads to a really pointed question.
What's that?
They built the guardrails, yes, but are the police actually maintaining them? Or are people still driving straight off the cliff?
That exact question is what led to the most recent and perhaps most impactful chapter of this entire saga.
Okay.
The Suzy Lamplugh Trust, acting on behalf of the National Stalking Consortium, realized that the laws they had fought so hard to put on the books simply weren't being executed properly by officers on the ground. So they filed a formal super complaint.
And a super complaint isn't just like a regular grievance you file at a local precinct. It's a massive systemic alarm bell.
Yeah.
This one triggered a joint investigation by 3 major watchdog groups: the Independent Office for Police Conduct, His Majesty's Inspectorate of Constabulary, and the College of Policing.
And the findings of their joint report are grim. Impartially speaking, the report lays out that despite all the new legislation, police forces across the UK are fundamentally failing to identify stalking. Period.
But how is that possible with all the laws in place? Like, the guardrails are there.
Because of how police are trained to view crime. Police are trained to look for single actionable incidents. A punched face, a stolen TV.
Okay, sure.
But stalking is a pattern of fixated, obsessive behavior. Instead of seeing the pattern, officers are treating stalking as a series of isolated events.
Right. So they see a threatening text message, and instead of asking about the context, they just log it as malicious communications.
Exactly.
They see someone loitering outside a workplace, and they log it as harassment.
Exactly. They completely fail to recognize the psychological terror that defines stalking. And even more dangerously, they fail to recognize the high risk of serious physical harm.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the report highlighted that even when perpetrators actively breach existing protective orders, police often view it as a minor administrative violation, rather than a massive escalation of risk.
It's like having a state-of-the-art home security system installed in your house. You've got the cameras, the motion sensors, the reinforced doors. The laws are all there.
Right.
But if the frontline officers misidentify the threat right at the front door, they essentially never punch in the passcode. The alarm never sounds.
That's a perfect analogy.
Why is it so fundamentally difficult for officers to just connect the dots?
What's fascinating here is the sheer disconnect between having the right laws written down in Parliament and the reality of frontline bureaucracy.
Okay.
A report points out that the legal framework itself is actively working against the officers. It's just overly complex.
So the super complaint demanded a complete redesign of the rulebook. Let's talk about how they actually plan to fix this, starting with the law itself.
The report outlines several major structural fixes. First, they recommend simplifying the legislation. Currently, there is a clash in England and Wales between 2 different offenses, Section 2A and Section 4A.
Sounds complicated already.
It is. To strip away the UK legal jargon right now, police have to decide on the spot if a stalker's behavior is a minor annoyance meant for a local magistrate, or a severe psychological terror campaign meant for a higher crown court.
Which asks a B-cop to play psychologist on the side of the road.
Precisely. The watchdog recommends simplifying this into a single, either-way stalking offense, meaning it's logged as stalking first, and the severity is sorted out by the courts later.
That makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, and this is exactly how it's already handled successfully in Scotland and Northern Ireland.
Make the law easier to understand so officers can actually apply it. What about the protective orders? Because the report mentioned that stalking protection orders, or SPOs, are practically useless if they take too long to get.
That's the second major procedural flaw. SPOs are incredibly slow to process through the courts, leaving victims vulnerable for weeks.
Which is terrifying.
Right. So to fix this, the report recommends creating an interim SPO, modeled after domestic violence protection notices. These are immediate quick-time orders that senior police officers can issue on the spot.
So providing instant protection for the victim without waiting for a judge's calendar to clear.
Exactly.
Okay, then there is the principal crime rule. This completely blew my mind when I read it. Explain why this rule exists and how it's actively erasing stalking data.
Why does this rule even exist?
Yeah.
Well, originally, it was an administrative tool to prevent double counting in national crime statistics.
Okay.
If someone breaks a window to commit an armed robbery, the police log the armed robbery. They don't also log vandalism. You just log the worst offense.
Which makes sense for property crime, I guess.
Right. But the principal crime rule dictates that police only officially record the most serious crime involved in any given incident. So if a stalker's behavior escalates over months and they finally commit a more serious physical crime, like a brutal assault or rape, the police record that primary offense.
And the underlying stalking, what happens to that?
It might not be formally recorded in the database as a primary crime at all. It just gets swallowed up by the assault charge.
This is exactly where my emergency room analogy comes in. It's like diagnosing the massive heart attack, but legally erasing the 10-year history of high blood pressure from the chart.
Yes.
If you can't search the police system for the history of the escalating behavior, how can the next officer ever spot the pattern to prevent the next attack?
It's a catastrophic blind spot for intelligence gathering.
Truly.
To remedy this, the Watchdog Report demands the immediate implementation of included classifications within police databases.
Meaning what exactly?
This means that even if a more serious crime occurs, the history of stalking must still be logged independently and, most importantly, be fully searchable by other officers across different jurisdictions.
Oh, that's huge.
Yes. The Home Office and police chiefs are now formally tasked with rewriting these rules and updating their training curriculums.
So what does this all mean? It's incredible to step back and look at the trajectory of this deep dive.
It really is.
We started by looking at a missing estate agent in Fulham in 1986. We looked at serial killers, fake diaries, and shipping manifests. But through the relentless, unending advocacy of a grieving family, that true crime tragedy is actively being turned into a highly functional safety net for 2026.
Exactly.
For you listening right now, it means that the safety regulations you interact with every single day, whether it's checking the license on your minicab after a night out or knowing there is a legal framework to protect you from digital harassment, were born from the Suzy Lamplugh Trust.
And it proves that personal safety isn't just about reacting to a single bad moment.
Right. It's about forcing the system to recognize the hidden patterns before they escalate.
And looking forward, there is a detail tucked into the Super Complaint Report that offers a fascinating glimpse into how we might track those patterns in the future.
Oh, what's that?
The report mentions that the watchdogs consulted with the National Police Chiefs Council lead for artificial intelligence.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. When we talk about the desperate need to fix police databases and overcome bureaucratic hurdles like the principal crime rule, it raises a really provocative thought.
Yeah.
Could the future of personal safety rely heavily on AI?
That's a fascinating idea.
If stalking is fundamentally a crime of hidden patterns, isolated incidents, and digital footprints scattered across multiple jurisdictions, might an AI system one day flag a stalker's escalating behavior across databases before a human officer even realizes a crime is taking place?
A machine specifically designed to connect the puzzle pieces that human bureaucracy misses. That is a wild and honestly very hopeful thought to leave on. We want to thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the enduring legacy of Suzy Lamplugh. Keep questioning the systems built to protect you, and remember, sometimes it takes a single unsolved mystery to show a nation exactly where its guardrails are missing.